Welcome to the Hub of Champions, part of Believe Network, joined by Jahmai Webster, Red Sox TV reporter for NESN. I am Shukri Rice. Be sure to subscribe, comment, and rate and follow the podcast, and tell all the Boston sports fans to do the same as well. You can also watch us on Believe TV across the country, airports, and as well as on YouTube. Read the Believe stories on SI.com and follow us across all Believe social media platforms. Jahmai, how are you doing on this Friday?
Not too bad. I'm hanging in there. It's decent weather out, so appreciate you having me on. Glad we can knock this down, Shukri.
Absolutely, my pleasure. We have to start off with the big news that just broke like literally minutes before we started the recording. Patrick Maroons gets traded from the Minnesota Wild to the Boston Bruins. And as we were chopping up just before we hit the record, it became clear that it's got me fired up. It's got you excited. So I want to give you the opportunity to share your early thoughts on Patrick Maroons coming to the Boston Bruins for the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. Not just because he's a big dude, big body, that can put some physicality back in the Bruins and what they provide, on the D side. But funny story that it was last season during Red Sox towards the end of the year, and there was NHL playoffs, and we were in Tampa, and I think they must have been playing the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I ran into Patrick Maroon and some of the other guys. They were staying at our same hotel, and I'm like, this dude is massive. I'm like, man, the Bruins can sure use a guy like him. And now look, here we are in 2024, and they've acquired him via trade. So I'm excited about it. I like the move. The Bruins, they haven't been able to finish a lot of these games in OT, and that's been kind of a question mark about this team, as we inch towards the playoffs. So I like what they're doing so far. And, Bruce Cassidy, once again, he's at it again, and he's providing this team with an opportunity to do everything they can to try and, get that Stanley Cup. So I like it. I like it so far.
Don Sweeney, I think the move by Don Sweeney, it's a much needed move, because just last weekend,
Don Sweeney. Excuse me, I said
it's all good. Like Don Sweeney, I blasted the team last Saturday night, in which that the team lacked grit, they lacked balls, they lacked like having a spine, in which the way that they just showed up completely lifeless against the New York Islanders on Long Island, and a lot of the toughness that had been lacking since the indefinite suspension of Milan Lucic, who was brought to Boston, was brought back to the Bruins for a specific role. That role is now being filled by a guy that Bruin fans know all too well. 2019, I don't need to remind any Bruin fans of this particular notion. The Bruins faced them in the Stanley Cup Finals in 2019. Was a real pain, and part of the big physicality that the St. Louis Blues brought in that Stanley Cup Finals. And then obviously being part of back-to-back Stanley Cup championships with the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2020 and 2021. I mean, we all know the pedigree that the man brings, and as well as the presence that he has in the locker room. So this in itself, it's a big move for the Boston Bruins in every shape and form. But I want to shift from Bruins to talking about the Red Sox, because it's been an eventful week for the Red Sox, and not for good reason. I mean, the news of Lucas Giolito missing all of 2024 with the partially torn UCL doesn't spell good news for the Boston Red Sox, especially for a rotation that had so many question marks going into the season. Now they have an even bigger need that they need to fill in for this upcoming season. So, Jahmai, when the news first broke upon Lucas Giolito missing all of 2024, what were your initial thoughts, and as well as your takeaways on how the Boston Red Sox will be able to address their needs in the pitching rotation as they get ready for the regular season, which starts up in just less than 3 weeks?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, initially we found out that morning during Red Sox manager Alex Cora's early availability, and he told us, this is not a good day for us. He's dealing with some discomfort. That's how he described it. So that was about 9:30 in the morning. Maybe 10 minutes later, ESPN's reporting that he could miss the entire season with a partially torn UCL. This was Jeff Passan's report. So it turned out from being, this is not great. I'm optimistic, to wow, he can be lost for the entire year. So as we got more information, as that report kind of filtered in, it began to be more of a glaring need. Like they're going to have somebody fill in this role. I mean, Giolito was brought in because he's an innings eater. He's a guy who's gone 175 plus innings consistently. And that's something that nobody even got close to really last year on the Red Sox staff. I mean, I think it was 150 some odd innings from maybe it was Nick Pivetta, but Brian Bale didn't touch it. He was in the 130. So this is a guy who was going to give you some length, who was going to provide 6, possibly 7 every time he told the rubber. And with some improved defense, you felt like, all right, we got this guy. He was our big offseason acquisition to this point. So he can provide us with some steady hands as it relates to the pitcher's mound in the rotation. So he was one of the guys who had a guaranteed spot. It was Lucas Giolito, Nick Pivetta, and Brian Bale, who were already in their 5-man rotation. The other guys were fighting for the last 2 spots. So his loss for the entire season, it's massive. Obviously, you know, he went to Alabama to seek a second opinion, but there are some options here. Maybe they opt on giving him one of those PRP injections, which could, you know, put him out for months, but then come back. But at the end, you know, surgically repaired is probably the likely option because he's got a 2-year deal, right? So you think this is about a 15 to 18th month recovery before he's back. So he's up for 2 years. So you think you can get him back at some point, maybe before the All-Star game or the All-Star break next season or shortly thereafter, so you can kind of get your money's worth because he's going to opt into his deal for the next year because he's not going to be damaged goods and try to test the free agent market. So it's a major blow to kind of what they're trying to do this year and what they're hoping to do. And now it's like, as you think about what can be options to replace him, you got some internal options. Obviously, Garrett Whitlock is fighting for a rotation spot. Tanner Houck, Josh Winkowski, Cooper Criswell, who was also signed during the offseason, could be an option. He can be a long reliever, or he can just step into the rotation, or he can just be in the bullpen in relief. So they have some options there, but these are not really sexy names, so to speak, because, you know, you got free agent arms that are still out there. Jordan Montgomery being really one that the Red Sox fan base wants to come in here. Blake Snell still on the market. Not sure if that's really a fit, but there's still some arms out there that are going to command a big price. But it's like, you know, from a managerial standpoint or from an ownership standpoint, you know, you brought in this guy on short money, and now you're not only replacing him, but you're also going to fill in his spot, and then you're going to pay the premium. So it's like he may have been here, Giolito, that is, to keep you guys in the conversation, who knows, floating around 500 or better.
Yeah.
But now you're going to bring in a guy to not only try to finish there, but not sure if Giolito was healthy, you may be thinking, I'm going to bring in Montgomery to take us over the top, to fight for a playoff spot. Now you're basically starting at 0 again. And from an ownership standpoint, I don't think that's smart money, right? You don't think you're going to spend that money to finish below 500 or finish last place in the division again. So I think they're going to look at internal candidates, and that's pretty much how things are going to go. But who knows? Maybe they'll surprise us. We'll see.
And I'm glad that you brought up a point about ownership because, I mean, you may have unintentionally led me to us the next question, because as of Friday morning, as of right now, Jordan Montgomery is still available. Blake Snell still available. Here we are on March 8th, and the Red Sox are still showing the lack of willingness to go out and get them a frontline starter that could be a big help for this team. I think offensively they should be this season. I think offensively that the Red Sox, they should be just fine. Obviously, the biggest concern is the pitching rotation. And even though Brian Bale, who signed that contract extension, 6-year, $55 million, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but he's not ready to be the number one guy just yet. Maybe another year or two, yeah, sure. But right now, not necessarily. So, Jahmai, how frustrating is it for Red Sox fans to wake up knowing that you have two of the best left-handed starters in the major leagues available right now on the free agent market, and the Red Sox will not go out and spend the money to get either one of those guys.
Well, I think the fan base is majorly frustrated, and we've seen it basically all winter.
Yeah.
On social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, wherever they are, they're speaking. I mean, I've seen comments, people calling for John Henry to sell the team. I still think it's an investment that he's all in on. It just doesn't look like that. And, they talked about their plan. They got a plan here. They don't want to leverage the future to compete right now. They want to do this steadily. And that was part of the former chief baseball officer, Chaim Bloom's setup and his business plan as he came in here and trying to do that. So they're trying to build from within, just like the Orioles did. It took some time. It was painful. And they eventually got to the top of the mountain, won the division last year. So the Red Sox have some of those pieces, young players they're relying on coming up through the system. They have a few guys now who are competing, the Jaron Durans of the world, the Cedar Rafaelas, the Wilyer Abreu's, the Emmanuel Valdez's, those type of guys who are young players, not big major league veterans, but guys who've gotten a taste and who are looked at as, part of the 26 plus who are going to compete over the course of a season. So I see how Red Sox fans could be frustrated because, they talk about the ticket prices and everything else and, just feeling like they're being sold a bill of goods, right? Not being, I guess, feeling like they've been given the full truth and, what the expectations are. But, as a fan, I see how that can be frustrating, but, there is a process to what they're doing. And they've tried to let us in on a little bit of that, talking about they're not going to go over the tax, the threshold, and they got to get payroll down to a certain number, and they have these parameters and this budget for trying to do it. So it's frustrating for sure because you see teams like the Dodgers, you see teams like even the Yankees. If you look at teams within your division and what they've done, Orioles obviously coming back, doing what they're doing. The Yankees have added, they even traded for Alex Verdugo. They got some pitching arms, and they feel like, hey, these are major league guys. They're ready now. A lot of question marks surround the Red Sox, and that was the case last year. That's the case this year again. So it's like if these things can happen, then we can be competitive. And people don't want to have questions. They want to have some answers, and that's what they're waiting for. But in the meantime, they're going to just remain frustrated. But I think people will still watch with intrigue. The team could get off to a good start, and that'll be good for everybody in business. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be tough, but, last year, about late July, August, they were in the conversation, and then they ran out of steam. So this year, it's about being able to push over that threshold and see what happens.
You were just at spring training, and you just talked about how you were able to at least get a pretty good look at some of the young players that are coming up. But I want to focus on one in particular, and that is Tristan Casas, because so much has been made about Casas and his development and how he's coming to spring training even bigger and stronger than he was last year. In second half of last year, he was even more productive than he was when he first came up to the major leagues. So how excited or optimistic, I should say, are you in terms of Tristan Casas, in terms of what he can bring potentially to this lineup this season, and as well as some of the progress and developments that you've seen while you were down in Florida?
I mean, first off, he's just one of my favorite players on the team and probably one of the most intriguing guys to have conversations with because he's such a original person. Like he's himself. There's really no duplicates. So I appreciate the fact that he keeps it real, one, and then he stays true to who he is as an individual. But I mean, he struggled the first half. There's no question about that. Coming into the big leagues for the first time, having a little bit of success, but second half he hit well over 300. He hit more than 10 home runs during that stretch, and he finished third in the American League Rookie of the Year voting. So he was able to figure some things out and stick with this process, which brought him that success. And the team was able to also be patient with him and give him an opportunity to thrive. And these are guys who all throughout their careers never really failed or had any downturn to some of their offensive production or what they do on the field. So having an opportunity to fail at the big league level, I think was big for him. And he was able to finally make some adjustments and turn it around. But he's coming to this season, and I there's already chatter because he hasn't had a spring training hit yet, and he's had 11 at bats. But this is just spring training. People don't really understand that guys are working on stuff, right? And a lot of it is just, hey, I just want to, maybe see the balls better away, and they may not be swinging at everything crazy. They could be selective. So I don't put too much stock in that, but he is very cerebral, as we've come to find out, and he knows what he's doing. He has a plan. He goes in there with his approach, and he tries to execute that. So I think he'll take another leap. Offensively, as you mentioned earlier, I mean, this team, they're good in that department, and they've got some of these young guys who are coming along too, who hopefully can contribute to that. But as far as Tristan Casas is concerned, I think he's going to be, one of the most productive bats in this lineup. And, he's a guy who can hit 25, 30 home runs per season or more and, provide some pop right there at the top of the order. So I think he's going to be good. And I think that's why there's conversations about extending him and, continuing locking up this young core.
Speaking of extensions, by the way, we talked about it just a hint a little bit in your response in regards to Brian Bayo, who signed a 6-year contract extension for really good money, and for a lot of fans are describing as he is Pedro 2.0. It's just pure raw stuff at such a young age. And Jahmai, like when you watch Brian Bayo and when you watch the work that he's done during spring training, during a time when you were down in spring training, how excited are you, and how excited should the fans be in terms of not only just the deal itself, but rather you're starting to see like the fruits of the work that he's been putting in with Pedro Martinez in the Dominican Republic now starting to translate at the big league level as well?
Yeah, he's another guy that they're obviously going to lean on this year. I like his compete. I like the way he goes about it. Even at a young age, like he's a fiery guy when it comes to stepping on the mound. He's you see him, they call him Nino, right? Around the clubhouse, like little kid, little boy, right? Mm-hmm. But when he's on the mound, he's a completely different person. So I think that's why they extended him, because you see the potential, right? And his stuff, it plays. He's able to get weak contact and get easy outs. And when he's on, it's a beauty to see. And we saw that against the Braves last year. That's really where he kind of made the turn. His start in Atlanta against the Braves when he needed it against that tough lineup, that's pretty much where he grew up. So last year he was counted on. He made several starts, his first real full year in the big leagues. And I think this year he'll take that leap and get even better because it's a necessity. So they're counting on him to produce and provide some production. But yeah, certainly a team-friendly deal. I mean, it's annual average about just less than $10 million per, and that's short money because it's going to take him to even before he becomes 30 years old. But for him, it's like, hey, this is $55 million real dollars. So it's life-changing, and it's going to be a benefit to him. But it could be a situation where, he's certainly outperforming his contract if he turns into that ace, that number one that kind of people expect. But he can first start off becoming a serviceable big league starter and being productive and, making 20, 25 plus starts per year and going deep into games. I think they'll get their value there. And if he can do that, obviously that'll be big for this organization.
Yeah. When you look at the upcoming trip for the Red Sox to the Dominican Republic, we know the Dominican ties that this team has, obviously with the legends such as the Hall of Famers Pedro Martinez and Big Papi David Ortiz. But looking at this current team, and you look at some of the young studs on this team, including Rafael Devers, and who's currently the face of the franchise, and as well as Brian Bayo. So, Jahmai, how big of a deal is it for the Dominican players to get the chance to be able to play in front of their friends and families, for many of whom may.
Yeah, it's massive. It's huge because Rafi and Brian talked about earlier this week about how special it is being a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid. And Dever said he never had an opportunity to see a Major League Baseball player. So everything that he did was on his own personal drive and expectations that he had on himself to be the best, and he was able to get there. But this is one of those things that this is life-changing. This could be life-changing for some kids who are already fanatics about the game, but having an opportunity to see it up close and personal, it's going to be huge. I mean, this is going to be right in the heart, of the capital. And they're going to have an opportunity to be able to play in front of their friends and family, as you mentioned. And Bale said he was sad that he was not going to be able to pitch here, but being here is going to be just as sweet. And also, they'll make his signing official on Saturday. So he's going to have his press conference down there. And I'm sure he's going to have a lot of support from the people who saw him come up, through the organization, and obviously being signed as an international free agent and to where he's now become, getting this long-term commitment from the Red Sox. So that'll be special in its own right. But this is huge. I mean, this is part of Major League Baseball's initiative to grow the game, and they're doing it in a lot of these Latin American countries. And I'm hearing next year there could be something even bigger in the works as it relates to the Red Sox. So this is going to become kind of an annual thing that they do to get people introduced to baseball. And they've made all these adjustments to getting it back to the game that I grew up watching in the mid to late 90s, where it was fast paced. It didn't take forever. And with the advent of the pitch clock, it's become almost second nature now. So these games are going 2.5, 2:15 on the early end, 2:45, basically always under 3 hours, which, is certainly going to extend my career, not sitting there for 4 hours, and a lot of these guys too. So I love it. I love the fact that they're going to these places. I wish I was there, that's for sure. Had I known this was going to be happening like this, I certainly would have probably made arrangements to try to get over there, maybe sneak on a beach in the DR or something. But I think it's going to be a party for these 2 days that they're playing the Rays there, and the Latin fans, they go crazy for their baseball. So it's going to be a fun thing to watch. I'll certainly be watching. Obviously, you can catch those games on NESN at 1 on Sunday and 6:00 as well. So be sure to check those out.
For sure. And we've seen it in the World Baseball Classic, where the passion of the Latin fans really makes the atmosphere so electric and special. In fact, this past, I think it was earlier this week, the Miami Marlins, for example, they announced that they were going to be allowing like some of the musical instruments that that they will allow during the World Baseball Classic to be brought to Miami Marlins home games. And I'm like, that's amazing, because it's not even just about the instruments, it's the culture, it's everything else that goes along with it. And we all know how big baseball is to Latin America, and especially it's like Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and a lot of the Latin countries as well. So I want to shift from the Red Sox to your journey as the Red Sox TV reporter for NESN. And I had a chance to talk to a really good friend of mine, Travis Thomas, who also works at NESN, who hosts the weekday betting show at 1 and 5:30 p.m. on a network, in which I asked him, you being an African American, being a person of color, and especially in sports media, and the importance of representation, you having the position and being blessed with the opportunity that you have with NESN, being part of the Red Sox TV broadcasts over the last several years. What does that mean to you? How much does it mean to you to have the opportunity, being an African American or a person of color, to be able to cover a major league team on a nightly basis?
Well, it's not something that I take lightly, that's for sure. I think it's a massive accomplishment for me personally, and then for the network, giving me the reins and the blessing to be who I am and remain true to that. So I think that's huge. And it's something that I've taken into my career at a lot of my different stops where, I've been the first, or, I've been a groundbreaker in that aspect just from, my racial background. So, um, I carry it as a badge of honor, to be doing this as a person of color, as a Black man, working for the Boston Red Sox in New England, and being in several different homes throughout the region on a nightly basis. So having people be able to see, what it's like to see some Black excellence, so to speak, and to see me do it at
Yeah.
a proficient
Mm-hmm.
level, and to be, a hard worker, to be good at my job, and to not only just be African American, but also be proficient to get the job done just based off the merits of my abilities, and also the journey that I took to get there. Because I didn't go out and seek this. I kind of fell into this opportunity, and then I grasped it by the horns, and I ran with it. So I didn't think I'd be a baseball sideline reporter. I thought it'd be basketball or football before then, because obviously those are some of the top sports that I enjoy watching and loving. And there's not many of us, as far as Black men who do this on a full-time basis around the league. I mean, there's 30 jobs, there's 30 teams, there's only 2 of us. So shout out to my man Andre Knott, who's the Cleveland Guardians team sideline reporter, who's there. And there's not many Black women as well. There's Kirsten Watson, who's with the LA Dodgers. And the numbers really start to dwindle outside of that. So I think representation certainly matters, so people can see that, if not only that you can do it, but if there's an arena or there's a profession that you want to go into, there's an opportunity to get there. So though the numbers are small in this space, I hope to, be able to inspire or be able to show somebody that, hey, I can get there as well, and I can do this, and I can find a career, whether it's in front of the camera or behind the scenes. I think there's opportunities elsewhere. So, I take it certainly with pride, and I'm glad that it's me, and I'm glad that I have the opportunity to do that. So it's a major blessing for me, and, it's enriched my life as much as I hope to enrich the viewers as well.
Absolutely, and I've been very proud of you. Watching you for like the number of years, I've been able to watch the Red Sox on NESN and be able to see like that representation, like fully present. In terms of like your TV work, and as well as like seeing my friend like Travis Thomas, who does the betting show on weekdays at 1 and 5:30 on NESN as well, and being able to see like just like how much it means to you and as well as to him, and to be able to see like that the representation and how important it is to be able to turn on the TV like anywhere and be able to say, hey, you know what, like that person looks like me, I can do this, like that person like looks like me, he understands me, like I can do this and so forth. And I think that in itself is truly everything. So like take me back to your beginnings. Like when did you first fall in love with sports, and like and how did it ultimately lead you down the path of pursuing a career in sports media and broadcasting?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been a fan of sports since I can remember. My dad is a track coach,
Yeah.
um, and he introduced us to sports and a variety, not just track and field, but played basketball, played baseball, played football, obviously ran track. So I had a variety of experiences in sports, and took that all the way up to high school, and probably could have had an opportunity to play in college if I wanted to pursue it at that point. But I decided to just focus on the books and focus on this career. And I'd say I got bit by this bug probably in the 3rd grade when I was about 8 years old. We had a school project where we had to create a newspaper, and they put me in charge of the comics, and I had to create a character, and I created a story. And I was just fascinated about how people were engaged with the storytelling aspect, which is something that is really the foundation of still what I do now. I enjoy telling
Mhm.
the stories. That's what, enlightens me and really gets me engaged is about just diving into somebody's background and being able to share that with everybody. So this was in the third grade that we had this project, and I created a character and wrote this story, and I was like, this is pretty cool. And then come to find out that, hey, people get paid for this. So that led to going to high school and then writing for the school newspaper while being a student athlete, playing several different sports and, primarily basketball and running track and those things. So I did that, won some reporting awards at that time and was breaking some stories. And I remember one in particular where I was writing about some dissension between the women's basketball team and, the coaching staff. So it caused some waves amongst the faculty and staff, but it was great to be able to get that perspective and, have these girls' voice about, some of the things that they were displeased with the coach. So it blossomed into that. And I got to college and I was like, yeah, I'm going to major in broadcast journalism. So I knew right away I was one of the lucky ones that I kind of had this in the back of my mind from being a third grader to finally going to college and falling into a school where I went to Cal State Northridge, and it had my major, and they had so many different, famous alumni who had gone through the program. So I was like, this is what I wanted to do. And I wasn't a great student in high school, but once I got to a college, I just turned into somebody who was just so much better because I was starting to do curriculum and focus on work that I actually was really interested in. So I love college. It was a great experience for me. Not only did it take me 5 years to graduate for several different reasons, but a lot of it was just having a good time and enjoying it very much. But did that. And then my last year I was interning. I had an internship with the CBS affiliate in Los Angeles. That's where I'm from. So I was working there and covering the Dodgers, the Lakers, USC football, UCLA basketball at a time where, Russell Westbrook was on UCLA. Kevin Love was on the squad. They were making NCAA tournament bids, Jordan Farmar, and, USC had Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and Mark Sanchez and Brian Cushing and some of these big names that went on. So it was just to be able to be at the forefront of what the country was talking about really was attractive to me. And I enjoyed that. And that really just continued to drive me like, I want to do this. My goal was always, if I'm not going to make it to the big leagues, if I'm not going to make it to the NFL, if I'm not going to make it to the NBA, I want to be as close to it as possible. So this was my second way in. And, I took that and I ran with it and I made it, I made it to the top. So it basically started there. And so after I graduated, I got my first TV job in College Station, Texas, which is where Texas A&M is, and covered high school sports, covered the Aggies. This is at a time when Von Miller was there and Ryan Tannehill was there. He was actually playing wide receiver. He didn't get quarterback till later. So had a great experience there. And I was working for the ABC affiliate. Then I got promoted to be a weekend anchor at our sister station in Waco, Texas. So then I was covering Baylor athletics and high school football. RG3 was there. He won the Heisman a year later. Brittany Griner was there as well. And they had, an amazing Elite Eight run in the NCAA tournament with Scott Drew was the head coach. And they lost to Duke that year, who went on to be the eventual champions. I believe this was in 2010. But it was a great experience in my time in Texas. But I felt like I had hit a ceiling and it was time for me to move on. So 2 years there. And then I went to Honolulu, Hawaii, which was just, it's amazing. Like sight unseen. Had never visited the island, but got an opportunity to go there. And I was just like, hey, yeah, I guess I'm moving to Hawaii. Like there was a time when my parents went there for a honeymoon once or an anniversary trip, and they bought me back a T-shirt from Maui. And that's all I knew about the islands. But I applied for the job and like literally that night, because it was a 5-hour time difference, I believe. I got a call from the sports director who, called me that night, and I was like, oh, this must be spam or something. So I didn't answer it, and he left a message, and he called back the next day, and I finally got it on the horn with him, and he's like, yeah, I want to bring you here. I'm like, well, let's go, let's rock. So it wasn't but a couple months of negotiating and finally made my way there. And I spent 4 years in Hawaii, and I enjoyed it very much. And it was just so impactful to me personally, professionally, in my career. And, being over there where it was, you cover the whole island, but you also cover the people who are from there. So some of the great athletes who have come out of there, the Shane Victorinos at the time, Major League Baseball level, Kurt Suzuki, Colton Wong was a college player, but obviously went on to play in the big leagues. And then, you had Heisman hopefuls and Manti Te'o, who was there. So many different players. Jeremiah Masoli had connections, Marcus Mariota. And now, like, you get these great players out of the islands. I mean, when I was there, Tua Tagovailoa was in middle school, and he's coming up as a high school player. He eventually made it, but it was just so great because the people were phenomenal there. The Aloha spirit, it's such a real thing, and we grasp onto it. And it was tough to leave, but the networks and bigger opportunities were calling, so I had to answer that. And then I went to Denver, Colorado. I spent a couple years there. The Broncos won the Super Bowl, Peyton Manning's last year. So got reunited with Vaughn.
Wow.
And it was great because they had an excellent defense, and DeMarcus Ware was one of the anchors on that line, as well as obviously Von Miller. But they won that. The Denver Nuggets were beginning their turnaround. They had just hired Michael Malone, who's a phenomenal guy. Really appreciate the way he treated me during my time there, and their front office staff, and the Michael Connolly, everybody. So Denver was a great experience, and I wish I would have been more present during my time there and really experienced the city because it's a phenomenal place. But I was kind of in transition, thinking that, hey, this is going to be a next step in my progression. So then Boston came calling, and NESN called, and my contract was up, and I was like, I basically had a month, right? I remember this like it was yesterday because I remember I was flying to audition in Boston on September 11th, and I thought that was strange to be in the air on an airplane, obviously, with all the connections. But I made it there, auditioned in September, and then was hired in October and moved October 16th and started my journey at NESN in 2016. So it's been now, I'm in year 8 at the network, 4th year being the full-time Red Sox sideline reporter. And, I tell everybody who will listen, like, it's still the best job I've ever had. I've had so many opportunities to grow professionally and personally here. All my kids were born here now, so I guess they're Bostonians. But it's been great, and I'm still enjoying it, and things are different, but it's still one of those things where I'm learning and I'm having an opportunity to grow, which is why I've stuck around here so long. So, to go full circle with how I ended up here in my career, that's basically the abridged version. But a lot of hard work, a lot of stops, but finally made it to a place that I've kind of set down some roots.
That is amazing, and like, thank you for sharing your journey like with me. It was like you had a little bit of a planes, trains, and automobiles experience, and in your case, ship like a car, like a cruise ship. Since you were in Hawaii for to myself, as you were telling me your story in terms of you have gone, that your journey has also taken you to like the smaller markets. Like you talked about, you were in Waco, Texas. Like your willingness to go to the smaller markets in order for you to ultimately get to where you want to be. How important is that, as for anyone that wants to get into this business, to be willing to go to the smaller market and build a name for yourself in order to get the big opportunities that, like, for example, like the opportunity you've been blessed with at NESN?
Yeah, I think it's still important to grind your way to the top, and to have levels to your ascension up there. So times are different now, obviously, with so many different mediums, and you can build an audience on Instagram, you can have a YouTube page, you can do these things, you can podcast and everything. So there's so many different avenues to breaking into the industry, which is fantastic, that weren't necessarily available to me at the time. And that was kind of the I guess standard way of doing things. You had to go away in order to try to make your way back. So for me, I appreciate my journey because not only do I have friends in all these different places and I made lifetime friendships in Hawaii, but it also gave me an opportunity to make mistakes that wasn't in front of an audience of 1 million people, right? You're watching different things. So having an opportunity to try different things, make your mistakes, learn from them, and not be under such a scrutinizing microscope was massive for me because I wasn't, a finished product. As good as I may have thought I wasn't nearly as good as that in real life. So now it just, it made me so much more proficient, so much more comfortable. And now like things that come out or things that are reported on, it's just like it's a little bit more at ease. So getting those reps have been important, and that's really what it requires. It requires repetition, just like anything else. Practice, constant learning, constant evolving, constant opportunities to do what you want to do, even though it's on a small scale. That pays dividends as you continue to rise up the ladder. So I think that was big for me over there because had I started into a big market, you would have fizzled out because it's like, where do you go from there at that point when you're not really, ready? And you're also to a place where you still need so much growth. So I think going away and coming back was just big for me. And it led me to this point. And I'm glad that I did it, in hindsight, obviously. But, in the moment, it feels like, oh, man, I'm never going to get out of here. And it's just like, this is crazy. And I'm over here in this podunk town in Texas. And I got nobody around, no big major metropolitan cities. But it was great. And it's an experience that was amazing, and I can certainly appreciate, how far I've come. And now I can, look around when now I'm on these big league flights. I'm staying at 5-star hotels and, you can think about the grind that you took to get to that point. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It sounds really like amazing, like just like the way that you paint in terms of the journey and reflecting on the times that it is taking you a major blessing for sure. And last question I'll ask you is, yeah, how like it's where you're from, and you 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 begin to fall in love with sports and sports media, and so forth. Were there any like broadcasters in general? Were there any broadcasters in general, especially of color, that you looked up to, or like media person that you looked up to that helped influence you early on as you began to carve out a niche for yourself in sports media?
Most definitely. I mean, it's really a long list because not only was I interested in doing this as a profession, but I was a fan of the medium and I absorbed it. And I was, I think still to this day, like black men or black kids, whatever the case may be, African Americans are like the #1 viewer for ESPN and SportsCenter. That's their audience, right? That's their target demographic. And a lot of what they do is kind of shifted towards us because, we move the needle, we push the culture and all those things. So at the time, like huge fan of Stuart Scott, obviously, and what he brought to SportsCenter and his flair to ESPN. Like he was, the GOAT in my mind. And I was a fan of his and just like I enjoyed his humor and his energy and his passion for sports. Dan Patrick was one of my favorite anchors as well. Huge fan of Scott Van Pelt. Still to this day, I just enjoy checking in with him and watching what he does. But as far as a national level, like those are probably some of my top 3 guys that I enjoyed listening to. And And then locally, like in LA, there's a local sports anchors, Jim Hill, who is at the CBS affiliate still to this day. Like he's 70 something years old, still rocking. And he's obviously a legend in his own right.
Wow.
It's funny because when Jim Harbaugh was introduced as a Chargers head coach this past off season, you know, Jim was asking a question. He was like, "I know who you are. Like, you're a legend." And he's like, "No, you're a legend." But it's like, you know, everybody knows Jim. Everybody knows Jim. And he's got the same look as he did when he first started in the 70s or 80s or whatever. So obviously look to him for just his unique style that he's kept throughout. There's another reporter that was there who's now the lead play-by-play voice for the LA Lakers on the radio, John Ireland. He was a huge mentor to me in my career, really helped me early on. So I've always been a fan of his work and how he was able to, you know, rise, because at the time he was the Lakers sideline reporter. So he covered all those championship teams, you know, with Kobe and Shaq and Robert Horry, Derek Fisher. He was a part of that. So major influence on me in my career. And, you know, we got other guys in the market, Rob Fukuzaki, who's still at the ABC affiliate, Fred Rogan, who was at Channel 4 for so many times, the NBC affiliate in Los Angeles. But those are probably some of my major influences, guys that I looked to and wanted to step into their shoes one day. And, you know, Craig Sager was big as far as reporting as well. So a lot of guys who, you know, either impacted my career or I seen something that they did and wanted to implement it into my style or something that I enjoyed about them, whether it was their interviewing technique or the way they got players to be disarming and engaging and different things that that kind of still serve me. So those are probably some of the main influences. But yeah, I definitely had a few of those guys.
Absolutely. Thank you. Jahmai Webster of NESN. You can catch him throughout the entire season on NESN Open. Like to be able to, you know, check out the festivities and as well as the excitement and hope and anticipation of a new season. So, like, thank you for all that you do, and thank you, Jahmai, for coming on to the pod, man. I've been a long time fan of yours, and as well as a big admirer of your work. Keep up the great work that you do on NESN. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Shukri. Thanks so much for having me, man. Certainly appreciated you allowing me an opportunity to, you know, share a little bit about me, give folks some insight into my process, my career, and kind of the journey that I took. So salute to you, man.
How much were you on the back end of what I was saying, if at all?
I caught a little bit of it, but it did get broken up there.
No worries. No, I want to say thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast. There's been some connection issues, like to the internet for some reason, which I don't get why. But I want to say thank you for all that you do. Been a big fan of yours, and as well as like respect the tremendous work that you do on a nightly basis covering the Red Sox on NESN. And look forward to you being part of the TV coverage on NESN throughout the entirety of the season, along with David Bryan, Will Millabrooks and company as well. So Jahmai, thank you for taking the time to come on the Hub of Champions podcast today.
Thanks so much, Shukri, for having me, man. I certainly appreciate it. Give me an opportunity to share my story, give some folks some insight into my background and the process that, you know, I take into this broadcasting. So salute to you, man. You solid.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Always, anytime.